In August 1st, 2025, Carrie Bradshaw died. I mean, not really, but according to what Sarah Jessica Parker posted last week on Instagram, she technically did.
Thank you all. I love you so. I hope you love these final 2 episodes as much as we loved making them for you.
After confirming the cancellation of And Just Like That and the reveal that the last 2 episodes of Season 3 were going to be the last ones of the show, these are going to be the last steps that we see Carrie Bradshaw give around New York. And after receiving this news, not that many people were surprised. In fact, the reaction of the audience was less of grief and sadness and more a sense of relief. And I would have to include myself in this group because I've been a firm believer that although I love the original show, there are a lot of things that I could have handled differently to preserve its dignity. And after seeing this reaction, I couldn't help but wonder, why did we have such a diametral change with the Sex and the City franchise? How did the reaction of seeing more of the lives of our favorite New York foursome have changed from, yay, I want to know more about their lives, to, why do I keep seeing them everywhere? Today we're going to discuss the whole path between Sex and the City to And Just Like That, and we're going to find out what went wrong and why as an audience we found relief at the thought of not seeing them anymore.
Welcome to the age of uninnocence. No one has breakfast at Tiffany's, and no one has affairs to remember. Instead, we have breakfast at 7 a.m. and affairs we try to forget as quickly as possible.
Sex and the City came out as a column Candace Bushnell created for the New York Observer in the 90s, and it was later adapted to a show that came out on HBO on June 6, 1998. The show depicts women in their 30s trying to find love in New York City while they lead their lives of modern women. The show was revolutionary for its era because it not only depicts a group of friends of an age group in which women have already started to dedicate their lives to create a family, it also shows that for said women, the most important relationship is the one they have among them and not with the men in their lives. We saw the lives of Carrie, Samantha, Miranda, and Charlotte, and we saw that there is life beyond our 20s and that through career achievements and financial success, there's a whole world of experiences that we could access through it. This perception makes us excited to grow older instead of being afraid of it because it gives us a sense that the possibility of a life with more than one road ahead. Not only that, but most of the audience saw themselves in at least one of these women. If you were a romantic, you were a Charlotte. If you were an ironic, you were a Miranda. If you were a serial bachelorette and sort of a man-eater, you were a Samantha. And if you enjoy a good dish of breadcrumbs with a side of failed promises, you were a Carrie. Nah, I'm kidding. Well, not so much. But as I said in my Carrie video, she reunites within herself all the qualities and some of the downsides of all her friends, making her the perfect candidate to tell a story. Not only hers, but also her friends, through an omniscient voice that I've come to amaze in the latest show. Through this concept, the success of the show was guaranteed, and through the brilliant storytelling, compelling and complex characters and timeless storylines, well, most of them, we've got a show that serves as a blueprint of female adulthood, not only for women in the 90s and the 2000s, but for all women since the show came out. There are girls entering her 20s now that are seeing themselves in one of these women and using them as an example or even as a cautionary tale on how to live their own lives. So through this renewed success and impressive record, it was only fair that what initially was a show eventually became a movie. And on June 6, 2008, exactly 10 years after the first episode of Sex and the City was released, the movie came out. And well, even though the movie was quite eventful and even more successful, it will start to show the cracks on the way these stories are being treated.
Lots of help. Help also known as Charlotte York, Miranda Hobbs, and Samantha Jones.
As I said before, the first movie was quite an event, not only for the audience, to be honest, not so much for the critics, but definitely for our girls. In this movie, we're going to finally see Carrie and Mr. Big's relationship as a serious formal couple, Samantha in a serious relationship after beating cancer, Miranda deals with motherhood and domesticity, and Charlotte living the life of a wife and mother she always aspired to. However, the movie had a different idea, and it kind of sold a lot of the concept of evolution for these women for the sake of drama. And too bad it wouldn't be the last time this happens. And instead of setting a set of very different but evolving romantic relationships, we faced a bunch of conflicts that were created in the first act that get resolved on the third one, leaving most of the girls the way we found them, with of course the glaring exception of Charlotte, which again will be a constant as we eventually see reflected in And Just Like That as well. The movie is eventful to say the least. Carrie gets left at the altar, Steve cheats on Miranda, Samantha faces difficulties trying to stay in a committed relationship, and Charlotte, after many failed attempts and stress about it, finally gets pregnant. And by the end of the movie, Carrie marries Big, Miranda patches things with Steve, Samantha breaks up with Smith, which is something that I have very mixed feelings about it, to be honest, and Charlotte finally has a healthy baby the traditional way. The movie could have gone to different places in order to preserve the plot lines and show some evolution in all of the characters instead of recurring to the tire "let's break it down because we'll fix it later" sort of plot lines. That, to be honest, only served to extend an already dying dynamic. But it was entertaining and on brand with what the show was, especially compared to a little movie that I like to pretend that it doesn't exist. I can only describe the second Sex and the City movie with 2 words:
painful and unnecessary.
And if the cracks weren't evident in the first movie, you can definitely see the demise of the franchise with every arc that it's developed here. I shouldn't have used the word development because that's precisely what this movie lacks. While the original show was intelligent and witty, this movie leaves a lot to be desired. Our girls go to Abu Dhabi. The plot says it's because Samantha is running a PR campaign for the Arab Sheikh, but in reality, this seems to me like one of those Adam Sandler movies that get HBO to finance the cast vacations. With an occasional but very wide cultural immersion here and there, the movie sees Miranda leaving her job as a partner, Charlotte doubting herself as a mother, Carrie reconsidering her marriage with Big, and Samantha trying to control her hormones, now that she has reached menopause. All time that could have been better spent developing these characters on these very same topics without including scenes like this.
Oh! Wow, you have an actual camel toe.
And the movie did as well as we expected, because instead of fleshing out these women the way the show did, this movie got the worst parts of the last seasons of the show and the worst parts of the last film and exacerbated them. Especially the inexplicably awful treatment the plot gave to Samantha, which is universally loved by the fanbase. The movie literally did nothing to advance the plot or set it back, but basically did the same thing the first movie did, only worse. And this time not only the critics noticed. Most of the audience hates this movie as much as I do. And it's odd that even after this reception, it was decided that a third movie was going to be filmed. Thank God Kim Cattrall stood firm and decided she wasn't going to return and that any amount of bullying or bribery were going to make it happen, even if she was blamed by the rest of the cast and some of the audience for it not happening. Too bad her denial to reprise her role as Samantha didn't stop what eventually was going to become And Just Like That.
Remember when we had to legally stand 6 feet apart from one another?
Yeah, I miss it.
And Just Like That brings us back to the lives of Carrie, Miranda, Charlotte, with the glaring absence of Samantha, and includes 4 characters more to unsuccessfully compensate for Sam's absence. The overachiever Lisa, the sensual and strong Seema, and Naya and who would end up leaving the show in season 2, aside from giving Anthony more storylines on protagonism than he deserves. In spite of having a larger group and adapting some concepts to a modern lens, like gender identity and sexuality seen through it, the show failed to recapture what made the original great. It added new concepts into its plot but removed the most important of all, The cheeky, fun tone of the overall writing that was enhanced by Carrie's witty narration of her friends' inner thoughts. Even with the inclusion of prevalent topics for modern women and the acknowledgement of the perceived limitations and drawbacks that age adds to their lives, the show is missing the fun that initially made us interested in these women's lives. The tone of the show seems sterile, and despite the lighting and the color of their outfits and the environment the stories develop in, once you see them interacting, it feels like the show has lost its soul. Everything is so corrected that even the humor is bland and falls short every time. And when it tries to be a little raunchy like the original show was, it comes off as sad, out of place, and a cheap laugh coming out at the expense and dignity of the one who the joke is being placed on, which in most cases is Charlotte. People were not asking for the show to be like it was when they were all 30 years old. People mostly expect a consistent evolution of both the characters and the tone, and not to change fundamental things that, although flawed, made Sex and the City good in the first place. The new character and concepts in some cases enhanced the show, but in most cases played against it. The inclusion of Shay, for example, felt so forced and out of touch that even if it was a modern update, it felt all 2 minutes after we watched it, and I can tell you, nobody liked Shay. A lot of people were rightfully skeptical of their revival, because if these kind of reboots weren't tricky enough to develop, usually the people who take the task in their own hands do such a poor job trying to understand the essence of the original that it ends up feeling like they didn't even watch the show, even if they were the same ones who wrote the original ones. The showrunners on the network try to revive a show for the sake of nostalgia and a cheap buck, and ends up cannibalizing their own story. It's time for them to understand that although it seems easier to bring back a story from the dead, it can be tricky when there's already a fan base emotionally attached to a story that apparently they know way better than the writers of the story themselves.
Do you think we'll still be friends when we're this old?
Sure.
Seeing this show and calling their characters by their names seems like a betrayal of what the original show was. Because yes, she looks like Miranda but doesn't act like her. Yes, he looks like Aiden but doesn't act like him. Only Charlotte is the one who can still be called by her name and be recognizable through it. And Carrie? Carrie is the visual representation of how safe the showrunners were trying to play it with the creation of this show. She no longer has strong opinions. She's no longer disruptive or transgressive. She's playing it safe. It's like after all these years, she's still playing the role of society woman that she was aspiring to when she was throwing herself at Big all over New York. And I'm not asking Carrie to repeat the whole tragedy that has happened with Big, but I'm asking for a 56-year-old woman that is consistent to her 35-year-old self. Current Carrie is too serious, too proud, and too polished to in any way resemble the flawed Carrie we met, and this discrepancy in her behavior doesn't make us like her more. In fact, it makes us like her less because that's not even her. We've gotten to a point where we can see clearly that Carrie Bradshaw didn't need Sarah Jessica Parker to subsist. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Carrie became such a monumental icon that Sarah Jessica Parker cannot live without the relevance that it gives her. Carrie has surpassed Sarah Jessica in relevance and importance in pop culture to a level that she made every possible move to make sure she could, metaphorically and literally, wear Carrie's skin one more time. To me, it seemed like a cocoon she retrieved whenever she felt she needed to confirm her relevance, even if it was borrowed. So it was even more evident when someone we call Carrie stopped behaving like Carrie. Not only that, but recently I have learned that before the show was cancelled by HBO, SJP was creating new storylines for season 4, for a show she doesn't even watch, which only confirms my idea that the existence of Carrie Bradshaw is only extended as a way to perpetuate Sarah Jessica Parker's importance in pop culture. Something that ended up backfiring hard because I don't know many people who genuinely enjoy this show. What could have been a show that achieved the relatability that Sex and the City achieved for women in their 30s, now in their 50s, became a sort of mockery of what initially made the show good in the first place. What I love the most about the show, beyond the fashion, the humor, and the hilarious and heartfelt plot lines, is the bond that these women share. They argued, they disagreed, but they never stopped supporting each other. The relationships were complex, but deeply important for all of them. At least once in every episode, you could see them interacting, and through these interactions, their personalities shine through the observations they made. So if you ask me, I'm glad as everyone who wanted to see the show end. Not because I didn't think it was necessary to see their lives develop in their 50s, but because this is precisely what we didn't get to see. In fact, I'm a firm believer that we need more shows starring mature women, so they don't feel ostracized and relegated to shrivel into a corner. What bothers me is the feeling that, as audience, we were betrayed by the plot and we didn't get to really see any of them in the real capacity they could show up. It's the fact that the viewers were more loyal to these women than the writers of And Just Like That ever were, because we were able to recognize when our beloved protagonists weren't acting according to the years of development they had from the original show. So no, I'm not sad to see them go. What I'm glad of is that the original show did such a great job creating and developing these characters that after all these years, we still recognize, quote, remember, and even protect them from the decisions made by the reboot. And even if Carrie Bradshaw has finally decided to hang her Manolos, we still have the memory of her strutting all over New York City on them. And we can revisit the stories for generations to come. And that's all for today. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye-bye.